Jard stumbled through the alley, each step a betrayal as his legs threatened to give way beneath him. His chest burned, lungs gasping like a broken engine, and somewhere deep in his veins, the vampire venom crawled, a cold, insidious weight that promised a swift, unpleasant expiration. Above, the city's neon glow shimmered off the rain-slick pavement, painting everything in iridescent pinks, blues, and greens. A hovering courier drone buzzed overhead, loudly announcing an incoming package that wasn't for him. Jard muttered under his breath, "Great. Even the drones are mocking me now." His hand brushed against the wall of the alley, trying to steady himself, and he realized with grim humor that if he survived this, his obituary would probably begin. Human man trips to death, loses battle with gravity and vampire venom just in case. He coughed violently, choking on something that tasted like burnt copper and despair. Somewhere in the distance, a holographic advertisement flickered in time with his heartbeat, promising a new anti-venom serum with a smiley cartoon syringe. Jard groaned. He didn't have time for commercials. His vision wavered, and the edges of the world blurred into a swirl of neon and rain. Then he saw her, stepping lightly out of the haze. At first glance, she could have been human, sharp eyes, an elegant frame, hair shimmering like liquid metal, but her ears stretched upward in a graceful arc, too long to be ordinary, a subtle hint that she was something else entirely. She paused, watching him stumble like a drunken ant on the pavement, and for a moment her expression was unreadable. Then she raised a brow and in the faintest way smirked. Jard, despite the venom making his tongue heavy, tried humor. "Do all alien women have ears like that, or is it just a fashion trend?" The corners of her mouth twitched. She tilted her head as if considering the answer, then leaned closer. The air shifted. It wasn't just cold or humid, it was alive, a current that hummed faintly in his bones. Her lips brushed his, brief, almost impossibly so, and the venom recoiled, withdrawing like it had never been there at all. Jard dropped to his knees, blinking rapidly, feeling more alive than he had in months. He coughed again, this time in relief rather than fear, and muttered, "Well, that's new." She extended a hand, delicate but firm, and helped him to his feet. "Careful," she said, her voice lilting with an accent he couldn't place. "You might hurt yourself before the universe gets the chance." Jard stumbled slightly again and laughed. It was hollow at first, then richer as the reality sank in. He wasn't dying. The city around him, which had seemed threatening, even lethal, now felt absurd. He waved at a passing hovercar, muttering, "Nice weather for a car chase, huh?" She didn't answer with words, only a small, amused lift of her brow. She guided him through the maze of alleys and over skybridges that span the neon cityscape. Jard kept glancing at her, trying to process. "So you just kiss people back to life?" he asked. "That's a thing?" She laughed softly, a sound that made even the flickering streetlights feel less threatening. "Only humans," she said. "Aliens are notoriously stubborn about dying." Jard tried to imagine stubborn aliens and failed miserably, thinking instead of stubborn cats, which didn't seem as impressive. "Lucky me then," he said, rolling his shoulders, which still ached. "I'm about as stubborn as they come, or at least as clumsy." Her ship came into view, hovering silently above the street. It was unlike anything Jard had seen, smooth, organic curves that shimmered like liquid chrome, pulsating faintly with blue energy veins. He tried to make a joke about its resemblance to a jellyfish, but when he tripped over a low-hanging stabilizer field, he reconsidered. She caught him just in time, her fingers brushing his, and Jard, ever the commentator, muttered, "Your species really needs a warning label. Caution may cause death by clumsiness." She laughed, shaking her head, and for the first time since he had been poisoned, Jard felt a spark of genuine amusement rather than fear. Inside the ship, gravity wasn't consistent. He floated briefly before slamming gently against a wall, and she quipped, "You humans always find new ways to amuse me." He waved a hand weakly, trying to maintain dignity, which was quickly slipping. The walls of the ship glowed faintly with alien symbols, shifting in patterns that made his stomach twist and laugh simultaneously. "Do these walls ever stop talking?" he asked, pointing at a series of lights that blinked in a sequence resembling Morse code. "Only when you stop thinking about them," she said, smiling. "The walls are polite sometimes." She guided him to a low-lying chair that seemed to float just above the floor. He sank into it, feeling a warmth that was both alien and comforting. "So," he said, still trying to grasp the situation, I almost die from vampire venom, and now I'm in a spaceship with a mysterious alien woman who apparently doubles as a venom antidote. Did I miss the part where I sign up for this? She handed him a cup filled with glowing liquid. Drink, it's safe, probably, mostly, and yes, you missed the fine print. Jard laughed again, shaking his head, realizing that humor, absurd as it seemed now, was the only way he could survive the shock of being alive. Hours passed with her explaining the nature of her species, how energy flowed differently in her world, how venom, disease, and even certain poisons could be reversed with techniques humans could barely comprehend. Jard nodded along, occasionally interjecting with jokes about alien coffee being glow-in-the-dark or dangerously trendy. She rolled her eyes, but each glance carried a hint of warmth. By the time he finally closed his eyes to rest, he felt oddly safe. The venom was gone, his life intact, and for the first time in a long while, Jard laughed at the absurdity of surviving the impossible and realized that the adventure had only just begun. And somewhere above the neon-lit city, the drone continued to buzz, now silently observing a human and an alien woman who had somehow rewritten the rules of life, death, and cosmic humor together. Jard woke to a faint hum beneath his skin, like the ship itself was breathing. He opened his eyes to find the walls glowing softly, their patterns shifting in slow, deliberate sequences, almost as if they were winking at him. Somewhere above, the ship's propulsion thrummed with a steady rhythm that made even his heartbeat seem polite. Lyra hovered nearby, arms folded, watching him like a teacher monitoring a student who might spontaneously combust from clumsiness. "You're awake," she said, the faintest lilt of amusement in her voice. "Try not to explode before breakfast. It's bad for morale." Jard rolled over, trying to remember where exactly breakfast happened in zero gravity. He tipped sideways, grabbed a floating cup that winked with phosphorescent liquid, and said, "So this is normal, just casually floating in space, sipping what looks like radioactive tea." She didn't answer immediately, just tilted her head and let the cup float back to him. "If you survive, it tastes better." He sipped cautiously. The liquid was warm, slightly bitter, but carried a faint sweetness that made his tongue tingle. "Alien coffee," he muttered, "definitely not FDA approved." Lyra snorted, a quiet sound that somehow seemed to bounce off the walls. "Humans take everything too seriously," she said, "even near-death experiences." Jard grinned, floating backward to avoid bumping into a wall. "Near death, I call that style points. If I were a vampire, I'd be impressed." He paused, realizing how absurd it was to joke about vampires while still recovering from venom. "Actually, on second thought, don't put that on my resume." Lyra moved with fluid precision, guiding him through the ship's corridors. Each step, or rather glide, revealed more of the ship's wonders. Panels that seemed to shift depending on your angle, lights that pulsed like a heartbeat, and doors that opened before you even realized you wanted them to. "It's a little interactive," she said, noting his awe. "Don't touch everything at once or the ship will file a complaint." Jard raised an eyebrow. "Wait, the ship has opinions?" She gave a faint shrug. "It has patience issues, mostly, and a sense of humor you probably won't understand. But it's polite sometimes." He followed her to a larger chamber where alien instruments floated, suspended by invisible fields. Lyra gestured toward a console, and a holographic map of the galaxy shimmered into existence. Stars blinked in colors he didn't recognize, some rotating like miniature suns, others pulsing as though breathing. "You'll need to understand this," she said. "Some of our situations involve precise navigation." Jard leaned in, squinting. "Looks like someone threw paint at a cosmic canvas and called it a map." Lyra's lips twitched in a suppressed smile. "You'll get used to it, or die trying. Either option is educational." They spent hours that day in what she called training, though it felt more like a combination of alien etiquette lessons and physics homework that could kill you if done wrong. Jard learned how to move without colliding with hovering consoles, how to read the faint energy signatures in the walls, and most importantly, how to not embarrass himself in front of an alien of superior grace and patience. Each attempt ended in minor calamity, a floating instrument narrowly avoiding his head, a small explosion of harmless sparks, but Lyra's reactions ranged from bemused tolerance to playful sarcasm. "I warned you about that panel," she said, raising an eyebrow as sparks fizzled around him. You humans have an optimistic relationship with safety. Jard waved sheepishly, muttering, optimistic. I call it creative improvisation. Between lessons, they ate, or at least Jard tried to understand the concept of eating in zero gravity. Lyra handed him a small, luminescent sphere that expanded into a sticky, sweet paste when bitten. Nutrition, she said simply, doesn't taste much like Earth, but it keeps you alive. Jard smeared it across his face accidentally, muttering, great, alien food makes me look like a science experiment gone wrong. She laughed then, fully, a sound that made the room feel warmer despite the hum of energy around them. You're going to be the most accident-prone human I've ever known, she said. By mid-cycle of the ship's artificial day, Jard noticed changes that went beyond the obvious recovery from Venom. He could sense subtle shifts in energy as Lyra moved, hear faint pulses in the walls, and occasionally detect the hum of life in nearby systems. I think, he said cautiously, I can feel things, not like emotions, more like vibrations. Is that normal? She tilted her head, a ghost of a smile on her lips. Partially, humans have limited perception of energy. What you're sensing is normal for someone who's been kissed by a life-altering alien. Jard blinked. Kissed by a life-altering alien, that's going to sound insane when I tell my mom. Lyra's laughter floated through the chamber. Your species has a peculiar relationship with sanity and absurdity. You're in good company. As the artificial day ended, they floated in a chamber with a window looking out at a gas giant. Its rings shimmered with electric blue storms, swirling clouds dancing like liquid metal. Jard tried a joke. I hope those clouds aren't plotting against us. I have a reputation to maintain. Lyra smirked. If they are, they're very polite about it. They lingered in silence for a moment, the absurdity of the situation pressing on him, not in fear, but in wonder. He had almost died, been saved by a creature that seemed to blend grace and mischief, and now somehow he was learning to survive in a ship that felt alive and teasingly sentient. By the end of the cycle, Jard realized something important. The kiss had not just saved him. It had opened a door to possibilities he couldn't yet articulate, a doorway to a bond that blurred species, lifespans, and definitions of survival. Lyra watched him with her long ears twitching faintly, a subtle indicator of amusement or satisfaction or both. Jard, despite the absurdity of floating snacks, near-death recovery, and alien lessons, felt alive in a way that was more than physical. He could laugh, joke, and survive with the same sense of wonder he had lost when the Venom had first struck. And as the ship hummed around them, guiding its improbable cargo through stars and unknown threats, Jard realized he had become part of something that would challenge every expectation he'd ever held about life, humor, and interspecies alliances. Somewhere out there, the universe waited, full of dangers, absurdities, and impossible jokes. But for now, floating beside an alien woman who laughed at his every misstep, Jard decided, perhaps for the first time ever, that surviving was going to be fun. Jard woke to the gentle vibration of the ship's energy core, a subtle rhythm that made his chest thrum in tandem. Outside the viewport, a binary star system glimmered, one sun golden, the other violet, casting impossible shadows across Lyra's face as she floated beside him. He blinked, realizing that the last few cycles had changed him in ways he didn't fully understand. Not just physically, though the Venom was long gone and his senses sharpened, but fundamentally his perception of the universe had shifted. He could sense energy threads where once there had been only light and darkness, hear faint currents in the hum of the ship, and feel the subtle pull of Lyra's presence even when she wasn't near. He grinned, floating lazily in zero gravity, and muttered, well, if this isn't the weirdest vacation ever. Lyra's long ears twitched as she floated past, carrying a small tray of luminescent spheres. Vacation? She asked, amused. You realize you're orbiting a dying neutron star with a 17% chance of spatial turbulence? Jard waved a hand, smearing a bit of the glowing nutrition paste he had tried to catch in midair. Minor detail. It's all part of the charm, besides I like how dramatic you sound. She laughed, a sharp, clear sound that made the walls of the chamber vibrate faintly. You're insufferable, she said, though the smile tugging at her lips betrayed her. And yet somehow you survived the Venom, the ship, and my lectures. I'm impressed. Over the next cycle, they navigated through asteroid fields and rogue planetary debris, using the ship's subtle gravitational manipulation to thread between floating hazards. Jard's initial clumsiness had diminished, though not entirely vanished. He still collided with a floating console once, narrowly avoiding a shower of sparks, and Lyra teased him endlessly. "You humans really need hazard warnings taped to your foreheads," she said, shaking her head. "I'm thinking of submitting a formal complaint to the ship's council." Jard bowed theatrically. "Please, I am a living testament to resilience and questionable decision-making." Lyra rolled her eyes, but there was warmth in the gesture. "Yes, a very human resilience," she said, smirking. As they approached the core of a dormant star cluster, the subtle changes in Jard's senses became more pronounced. He could feel the weak energy signatures of planets light years away, detect the faint pulses of life forms orbiting distant suns, and even sense the faint shadow of a vampire ship that had once brought him to the brink of death. "You're stronger," Lyra said quietly, almost as if testing herself to see if he could perceive it. Jard flexed his fingers, watching faint traces of blue energy ripple from them. "Yeah, feels like someone upgraded me without asking. Very considerate of them, I must say." The ship glided into a calm orbit around a small, verdant exoplanet. Lyra extended a hand. "Your species has always been adaptable, but this is something else. You've survived Venom, learned to navigate alien energy, and even mastered the ship's quirks. You're no longer merely human, Jard." He floated in the air, blinking, the enormity of her words sinking in. "So, you're saying I'm like part superhero, part alien, part cosmic joke?" She laughed fully this time, letting the sound echo through the chamber. "Something like that, and something you'll have to manage responsibly." Over the next hours, they repaired minor malfunctions on the ship, laughed at improbable errors, and shared stories that defied translation between human and alien idioms. Jard realized how much he had grown, not just in strength or skill, but in perspective. He no longer feared death in the same way. Humor, absurdity, and connection had become shields as strong as any physical protection. Lyra watched him with those long ears slightly quivering, a silent acknowledgement of his transformation. "I think," she said almost meditatively, "you've found your place in the galaxy, Jard. And not because you survived Venom, but because you chose to laugh, learn, and adapt." He nodded, smiling. "I suppose that's the only way to survive anything. Laugh a little, stumble a lot, and somehow keep floating." Then, as if to punctuate the moment, the remnants of the vampire threat appeared on the long-range sensors. A small patrol trying perhaps to claim old debts. Jard raised an eyebrow, smirking. "Shall we?" Lyra's smile widened. "Shall we?" she echoed. Together, they navigated the ship with fluid precision, using their combined strengths, human creativity, alien intuition, and a shared, absurd sense of timing to evade the hunters. They didn't destroy them. It wasn't necessary. They simply outmaneuvered, outthought, and outjoked them, leaving the would-be predators spinning helplessly in a gravitational trap. Jard couldn't resist a quip. "I'd say they underestimated our teamwork, but mostly they underestimated my charm." Lyra groaned, shaking her head, but the twinkle in her eyes betrayed amusement. When the threat finally faded into the distance, Jard sank into a chair that floated just above the floor. He looked at Lyra, her long ears catching the faint starlight, and realized how much he had changed. He wasn't just a human who had survived Venom. He was part of something larger, something that transcended species, planets, and the thin line between life and death. He had learned patience, gained strength, and discovered humor as a weapon and a shield. More than that, he had found a connection that defied logic: laughter, danger, and understanding shared across species. As they drifted above the verdant exoplanet, the first hints of an alien sunrise spilling violet and gold across the horizon, Jard spoke softly. "You know, this is kind of nice. Not dying, being alive. Floating in space, getting teased by you." Lyra tilted her